What would happen if a piece of land so small that many people have never even heard its name could pull two nations into a vortex of war for nearly 30 years? What would happen when a conflict thought to have ended in the last century suddenly returns in the 21st century? Not with trenches and rifles, but with unmanned aerial vehicles, precision-guided missiles, and strikes calculated by algorithms. And most importantly, who does Nagorno-Karabakh truly belong to? Seen from above, Nagorno-Karabakh is merely a small mountainous region in the Caucasus where Europe and Asia intersect. No seaports, no massive natural resource reserves, no major trade hubs. Yet this very place has become one of the most prolonged and dangerous conflicts of the post-Cold War era. Under international law, Nagorno-Karabakh belongs to Azerbaijan. But in reality, the majority of its population is Armenian Christians, tied to this land for centuries. Two peoples, two historical memories, one piece of land. For centuries, Nagorno-Karabakh existed under the control of major empires, Persian, Ottoman, and later Tsarist Russia. Conflicts existed, but never beyond the limits of control. Everything truly changed with the birth of the Soviet Union. After the Bolshevik Revolution, the Soviet authorities faced an almost impossible problem: how to govern dozens of ethnic groups, with overlapping histories of hostility, without letting the empire collapse from within. Joseph Stalin, then responsible for nationalities policy, chose a cold solution: redrawing the map. In 1923, Nagorno-Karabakh was designated an autonomous region within the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic, despite having a majority Armenian population. It was an administrative decision. No gunfire, no protests. But it was like burying a landmine underground. Not yet detonated. Just waiting for the right moment. For decades afterward, the Soviet Union kept all tensions in a state of forced silence. No one was allowed to speak loudly about sovereignty. No one was allowed to challenge the central order. But by the late 1980s, as the Soviet Union began to weaken, that silence ended. In 1988, the local council of Nagorno-Karabakh voted to request unification with Armenia. For Armenians, this was a correction of a historical injustice. For Azerbaijan, it was an unacceptable act of territorial division. Protests erupted. Ethnic clashes spread. The first riots left civilians dead. And then, the Soviet Union collapsed. When central authority disappeared, what remained was not peace, but a power vacuum. In 1991, Armenia and Azerbaijan became independent states. And Nagorno-Karabakh, from an internal Soviet dispute, became the cause of a nation-to-nation war. This was the first Nagorno-Karabakh War. The war unfolded in chaos. Inexperienced armies. Weapons inherited from Soviet stockpiles. Unclear borders. The laws of war almost non-existent. From 1992 to 1994, fighting reached its peak. Armenian forces with direct and indirect support from Yerevan gradually gained the upper hand. They not only controlled Nagorno-Karabakh, but also seized 7 surrounding districts of Azerbaijan, creating a wide security buffer. The cost was devastating. More than 1 million Azerbaijanis were forced to flee their homes, becoming refugees in their own country. In 1994, the two sides signed a ceasefire agreement. The guns fell silent. But the war never truly ended. Nagorno-Karabakh existed as a de facto entity with its own government, army, and borders, but was not recognized by any country in the world. For Armenia, it was a victory. For Azerbaijan, it was a national humiliation. The following 3 decades were an extremely dangerous period. An unofficial peace. Azerbaijan never accepted the loss of its territory. But it understood that in the 1990s, it was not strong enough to reclaim it. Instead, Baku focused on something else: energy. Oil and gas brought enormous revenues. The military was modernized. Strategy was rebuilt from the ground up. Meanwhile, Armenia believed the status quo could be maintained long-term, relying on mountainous terrain and combat experience. Russia played the role of arbiter. But an arbiter that always wanted to keep the conflict at a level just sufficient to maintain influence. And then, the balance of power shifted. By 2020, Azerbaijan was no longer the weak state of the 1990s. It possessed modern warfare technology, especially precision strike drones, with clear support from Turkey. On September 27, 2020, war erupted once again. But this was no longer trench warfare. This was war in the 21st century. Drones hunted tanks from above. Armenian air defense systems were systematically neutralized. Defensive positions once considered impregnable collapsed rapidly. In just 44 days, 30 years of reality were overturned. When the city of Shusha, a strategic and symbolic heart of Nagorno-Karabakh, fell, the outcome was sealed. On November 10, 2020, Armenia was forced to sign a ceasefire agreement. Russia deployed peacekeeping forces. Azerbaijan regained most of the territories it had lost. The war ended quickly. But Nagorno-Karabakh did not enter peace. It merely entered a new fragile state. The Nagorno-Karabakh wars reveal a cold truth of modern history. History does not end when the guns fall silent. It only pauses, waiting for another condition. This is not just the story of Armenia or Azerbaijan. It is a lesson about borders drawn by politics. About national memories that never fade. And about how technology can change war in just a few weeks. To this day, the Caucasus remains a fragile region. And Nagorno-Karabakh still has no final answer to the question: who does this land truly belong to?